My son finally got the bride he had been waiting for. He even said she was pregnant. My son I had been worrying about got married. And now, I'm going to see the face of my grandchild. My husband brought out his best wine, and the three of us toasted. However, while I was eagerly looking forward to my first grandchild, my daughter-in-law said something shocking.
That filthy cleaning lady is a bad influence on my child, so we're cutting ties.
A year of being estranged has passed, and now my son is coming to visit with his family. He had made up his mind. I am Julie Harris, 72 years old. Until 2 years ago, I was working hard as a licensed architect, but when I turned 70, I retired. Now, I live a comfortable life with my husband in a high-rise condo in Hudson Yards. My husband was a skilled carpenter, but he retired at 65. Since I was still working, he started taking cooking classes, and now he cooks for me. He's even better at cooking than I am now. In his free time, my husband builds model kits and takes daily walks to stay healthy. As for me, I thought I would take it easy after retiring, but I just couldn't sit still, likely due to my naturally frugal habits. So, a year ago, I registered as a cleaning staff and now clean office buildings around the city. Sometimes I come across buildings I helped design, and they feel like my own children, bringing back fond memories. I like this job because it keeps me physically active and healthy. At work, no one knows that I used to be a licensed architect, or that I used to make $500,000 a year, and now live in a high-rise condo. People's jealousy can be tricky, so I keep that part of my life a secret. It's easier for everyone to think I'm just a poor old lady who has to work even past 70. The only thing I worry about is my son, who is now 40 years old. He works at a sports equipment company here in the city. He's loved baseball since he was in elementary school, and in college, he played shortstop for his university's baseball team. Even now, he enjoys watching sports, especially baseball, and working in sales at the sports equipment company suits him well. He's single. 5 years ago, he was supposed to get married, but his fiancée betrayed him terribly. Simply put, she was only after his money. According to my son, after she found where we lived, her attitude changed. She started spending money recklessly, asking about my husband's and my health, and the final blow was when my son overheard her laughing with a man he didn't know, saying,
Once his parents are gone, we'll be living rich off the inheritance.
It was a big mess when they broke up, but somehow he managed to cut ties with her.
I can't marry someone who's eagerly waiting for my parents to die.
He said with a bitter smile, but I know the damage to his heart was deep. Not long after, he moved out of the high-rise condo and started living alone in a small apartment. It was hard for both my husband and me, thinking that the condo had become a source of trauma for him. That was 5 years ago. We hadn't heard anything about my son getting married or even dating anyone. Marriage isn't everything, and as long as he's happy, that's fine, but I did hope he would find a lifelong partner. We bought the high-rise condo about 10 years ago. Before that, we lived in a house in a neighboring state. It was a house that my husband's parents left us, and while it was a comfortable place to live, as we got older, climbing the stairs between the first and second floors became harder. One day, my husband suddenly said,
Hey, how about we sell this house and move to the city for our retirement? I've been wanting to live in one of those high-rise condos that everyone's talking about. It's convenient, and the security is great.
I had never designed a high-rise condo myself, but I was really interested. Living in the city would make it easy to visit places like movie theaters and museums, and after retiring, I wouldn't have to worry about being bored. I smiled at my husband's reasoning when he added,
If we just sit around the house after retiring, we'll probably lose our minds.
Therefore, we sold the house we had lived in for years and moved to a high-rise condo in the city. Living here, we found it to be as comfortable as everyone said, with various shops and clinics on the lower floors, so we don't even need to leave the building for most things. We chose the place carefully, so the property value shouldn't drop much. We also made the decision with the idea that, eventually, we might sell it and move into a retirement home together. Our son visits about once a month, and we usually have dinner together. One day, he came over and said,
Mom, Dad, the woman I'm dating is pregnant, so we're getting married.
My husband and I were shocked, but after that, we were thrilled at the good news. My son, who I had been worrying about, was getting married. And I was going to see my grandchild's face. My husband brought out his best wine, and the three of us toasted. His fiancée is a 35-year-old woman named Michelle, and they met while watching a baseball game. They were seated next to each other. They were rooting for the same team, and after a dramatic game where their team won with a walk-off in the final inning, they decided to celebrate together.
It's great to have a shared hobby that you can enjoy together.
At that moment, I imagined my son with his child wearing a baseball cap, the three of them happily watching a game together, and I felt so happy. Then my son said,
So, I have a favor to ask. Could you guys keep the fact that you live in a high-rise condo a secret for a while? It's not that I don't trust her.
It seemed like the previous experience had left quite a scar.
I understand. If that's the case, it's not like we're gonna keep it a secret forever, right?
Yeah, thanks. Once the baby's born, I think we'll bring them here.
I was really looking forward to that. After talking it over, my son and Michelle decided that since they're not young anymore, they wouldn't have a wedding but would instead do a photo wedding and throw a reception party. My son said that we didn't need to formally meet the other family, and we could just greet them on the day of the party. Apparently, more couples are getting married in this casual way these days. Well, if they're going to spend money on a wedding and reception, it's true that kids are expensive, so I thought this was a practical way of thinking. At the wedding reception, I was introduced to Michelle. She seemed like a strong-willed woman who spoke her mind. My son is easygoing and a bit timid, so my husband and I thought it was good that his wife was more assertive. Her parents are also still in their late 50s and apparently still working. What caught my attention was when Michelle asked,
Aren't you guys working anymore?
I replied,
My husband is retired, but I work part-time cleaning buildings.
Michelle's expression changed when I said that. She said,
Cleaning, huh?
with a look that seemed to belittle cleaning staff. My son and Michelle rented a 2-bedroom apartment close to Michelle's parents' home.
She said it's better to be close to her family since she's pregnant. My commute has become a bit more of a hassle, though.
My son said, sounding like he was already under her thumb.
Being under your wife's thumb is what makes a household peaceful.
My husband remarked,
Oh, when have I ever put you under my thumb?
Well, there you go, right there.
We laughed it off at the time, but it started to become less of a joke. When my son visited the high-rise condo for the first time in a while, I noticed he looked quite haggard.
Michelle says she's having a tough time with morning sickness, so she's lying down most of the day. I've been doing all the housework. I mean, it's fine, but...
He forced a smile. Helping each other through tough times is part of marriage, so I thought this could just be a phase.
Morning sickness. She's already about 7 months along, right? She should be in the stable period by now, and the morning sickness should usually subside.
She says she feels sluggish and seems really unwell.
Every woman is different, so I can't say for sure, but if she doesn't move around at all, it could make the delivery harder. You might want to consult a doctor.
I said this out of concern, hoping the baby would be born safely. After a while, when I contacted my son, it seemed that my advice had not been taken. He said she might be hospitalized for preeclampsia. Worried, I rushed to the apartment where they were living. Michelle had gained a lot of weight. Probably over 45 pounds.
Michelle, you've gained too much weight. Preeclampsia is serious. Even now, you should change your lifestyle, watch your diet, and do some light exercise.
I said this out of genuine concern, but it seemed to have struck a nerve with her.
What do you mean all of a sudden? The baby needs nutrients, and gaining some weight is unavoidable.
She snapped back.
The idea that pregnant women need to eat for two is outdated. Nowadays, it's common knowledge that you should eat a balanced diet and keep weight gain to a minimum.
My son was at a loss, not knowing whose side to take.
Michelle, you'll be 36 by the due date, right? That's considered a pregnancy at an advanced age. You need to be much more careful than younger mothers.
Maybe I went too far this time as well.
Why do you always have to say things that make me anxious? Just go home.
Michelle yelled, kicking me out. As my son walked me to the door, I said,
I'm sorry, maybe I did say too much. But I'm really worried.
He replied,
I know, Mom. I'll handle it, so don't you worry.
However, just a few weeks later, Michelle was hospitalized for preeclampsia. I thought about visiting her, but my son stopped me.
The hospital food is really terrible, so she's been really irritated.
He said. Well, of course, food with almost no salt wouldn't taste good. This was all the result of eating whatever she wanted and lazing around. All I could do was pray that my grandchild would be born safely. Perhaps those prayers were heard because Michelle was discharged from the hospital after about 10 days. From then on, as she must have been more careful, she managed to have a safe delivery. She gave a birth to a healthy baby boy. When my son told us the news, my husband and I held hands and rejoiced together. We rushed to the hospital to see them.
Thank you for letting us meet our grandchild. You've done a great job,
I said to Michelle, trying to express my gratitude. But she shot back.
I didn't have this baby for your sake.
People often say that mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law don't get along, but I never thought that would be the case for me. To Michelle, I must have seemed like an overbearing mother-in-law. I was so disappointed and felt really down. Even so, when I heard from my son that Michelle and the baby were being discharged, my husband and I brought a gift and visited their apartment. I thought that the newborn was so tiny and adorable. I remembered the day my son was born, and tears welled up in my eyes. When I gently tried to touch my grandchild's hand, Michelle yelled,
Hey, don't touch him with your dirty hands.
She must have seen me head straight to the bathroom to wash my hands thoroughly when we arrived.
Hey, that's not nice.
My son said, trying to reprimand her.
Whose side are you on?
She retorted.
It's not about taking sides, is it? Dad, Mom, you, and the baby, you're all important family.
What? What are you talking about? Of course, the wife and child should come first.
An extremely tense argument between the couple ensued.
Come on, both of you, calm down.
I tried to stop them, but Michelle shouted at me in a rage.
Shut up. Whose fault do you think this is?
Even though I'm her mother-in-law, the way she spoke to us was just too harsh. She continued.
That filthy cleaning lady is a bad influence on my child, so we're cutting ties.
She screamed hysterically. I was so shocked by what she said that I couldn't respond.
She's right. Seeing this isn't good for the baby.
My husband sighed.
Right. Michelle, is that all you wanted to say?
She didn't even reply. I felt so sad. My husband and I left their apartment, our shoulders slumped. After discussing it with my husband, we decided to keep our distance from them for a while. Maybe, with time, things will change. With that faint hope, we spent our days looking forward to the photos of our grandson that my son sent us through text messages. He started crawling, and recently, he has begun to stand with support. He's so irresistibly cute. The cuter the photos of my grandson, the more I longed to hold him in my arms, and it was heartbreaking. What caught my attention was that all the photos were only of my grandson by himself. Normally, wouldn't you take pictures of each other holding the baby? My husband and I were worried that their marriage might not be going well. As the first year of my grandson's life was about to pass, my son contacted me. He said that the three of them would be coming to visit us on coming Sunday.
Did you tell Michelle about the high-rise condo?
If not, they wouldn't be coming here.
Yeah. I told her about the condo, and that you used to be a licensed architect with a pretty good income. But she didn't believe me, so I'm bringing her over to show her.
It didn't seem like they were coming because things were going well between them, or because Michelle's attitude had softened and she was willing to get along with us, the grandparents. I guess he had his own thoughts about the situation. There were things I wanted to ask, but for now, I decided to wait for that day.
Wow, no way. It's true.
As soon as she stepped inside the entryway, Michelle cried out in delight. She had gained even more weight since the last time we saw her.
Oh my gosh, this is amazing. It's so spacious. How many rooms are there? And the view. It's on the 30th floor, right? Stunning.
Without even greeting us, she wandered freely inside, inspecting the place. We were too absorbed in taking turns holding our grandson, whom we finally got to see. Just looking at him sleeping peacefully made our cheeks soften. My grandson woke up and started crying. Was he startled by the unfamiliar surroundings, or maybe he was hungry?
Michelle, the baby is crying. Is it time for his milk?
However, Michelle seemed oblivious to the baby's cries.
There, don't cry, don't cry.
Why didn't you tell me sooner?
Michelle said to my son in a tone of childish manner that I had never seen before.
You even lied about being a cleaning lady, mother. You were making good money, right? Some sort of licensed architect or something?
She approached me, almost trying to sweet-talk me.
It's true that I work as a cleaning lady.
Wow, that's unusual. If I had this kind of money and lived in a place like this, I'd live luxuriously every day.
She was essentially declaring herself a lazy slacker. Then, riding high, Michelle blurted out something fatal.
This high-rise condo will become ours once you two pass away, right?
No, it won't.
What?
My son coldly replied, leaving Michelle stunned.
I'm divorcing you. I'll take custody of our child.
What are you talking about? Stop joking around.
I'm not joking. You've been neglecting housework and childcare, but I could tolerate that.
That's right. You should appreciate that I bore your unexciting over 40-year-old child for you.
She wasn't exactly young herself, so her words were nonsensical.
But I can't live with someone who's waiting for my parents to die.
What? I would never.
Do you know why I kept quiet about the high-rise condo and my mom's jobs?
What?
And why I brought you here today?
My son spoke with a pained expression.
What are you saying? This is my child. There's no way I'll give up custody just because of a divorce.
I see. All right. Then I'll pay child support, but please divorce me.
You want me to become a single mom and live in some apartment? You've got to be kidding. We can all just live here in the high-rise condo as a family.
This conversation made it clear that she wanted the condo more than custody of the child. My son probably brought her here as a final chance for her. It would be better not to divorce, for the child's sake. If Michelle had shown a bit more compassion toward us, my son might not have considered divorce. However, words once spoken can't be taken back. Once he made up his mind, my son stood firm, despite Michelle's attempts to win him back with tears and pleas. Even when she continued to argue, my son said,
I have recorded videos of you neglecting the housework and childcare, and I've also recorded your behavior here today.
What? How could you? You liar and coward. You're the worst.
Michelle turned pale.
If that's the case, let's discuss it through our lawyers. But Michelle, I haven't forgotten how you told me not to touch my grandson with my dirty hands and cut ties with us.
Yes, you declared our estrangement, and now you want to live together?
When my husband and I said that, Michelle collapsed to her knees without a word. Muttering curses under her breath, she staggered out of the room. This is how we ended up living in the high-rise condo with our son and grandson, the four of us together. For a while, my son was depressed.
Why am I so bad at choosing women?
It's my fault for suggesting we move into a high-rise condo. I'm sorry.
Though it wasn't really my husband's fault, I could understand why he felt responsible.
Well, it was just bad luck. 2 in a row, that's all. You'll meet someone good eventually.
No, it's okay. I have my son, and you two are healthy. I'm already happy enough.
My son smiled, a little sadly, and said that. Michelle returned to her parents' house after the divorce, but they were fed up with her constantly leaving the baby to go out. Upon discovering her debts, they reprimanded her and stated she could not stay unless she agreed to work. However, because of her excessive weight gain, she had trouble finding a job. Ironically, she ended up working as a cleaning lady, a job she had once looked down on. Now, she's treated as an incompetent older worker. Well, with that attitude of looking down on others, it's no wonder she's disliked by her coworkers. Sometimes, she would send messages to my son wanting to reconcile, but he ignores them without even reading them now. My husband and I were overjoyed to be able to live with our grandson, but taking care of a baby at over 70 was more challenging than we had imagined. A grandchild is adorable when you see them for just a few hours, but we had completely forgotten how tough raising a child can be. Seeing how my son had managed to work and raise a child almost single-handedly for a year made me admire him even more.
You guys must be exhausted. We should hire a babysitter.
My son made a suggestion, so we decided to seek help. We hired a 36-year-old single mother named Jamie to take care of our grandson from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. on weekdays. She is the mother of a 10-year-old girl and a 7-year-old boy. Being a mom herself, she's very efficient, and as a single mother who manages the household, she is a hard worker. She even makes lunch for my husband and me sometimes. Other times, my husband or I cook, and we all eat together.
I'm so grateful for the 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. schedule. It lets me get my kids off to school, go to work, and still have time to shop and prepare dinner.
Jamie said with a smile. She lives harmoniously with her 2 children. As we spent more time together, we grew quite close, and I even learned how she ended her marriage by throwing the divorce papers at her husband, who was addicted to gambling with no signs of changing. She doesn't receive any child support either. Jamie is a bright and resilient woman. We grew so fond of her that we invited her and her children to our home on a Sunday, her day off. She gladly accepted our invitation.
Really? My kids were so excited when I told them I work at a high-rise condo. They said they wanted to see it.
Jamie's children were polite, energetic, and adorable, and they quickly got along with our nearly 2-year-old grandson.
The view is amazing. The cars look so tiny from up here.
Watching the kids get so excited was delightful. Her young son was fascinated by my husband's model kits, and my husband eagerly showed him his collection of robots and aircraft models. Since Jamie has weekends off, it was the first time she met my son. They greeted each other with,
Nice to meet you.
and my son said,
Thank you for taking care of my parents and my son.
to which Jamie replied.
Thank you for letting me help.
They both thanked each other and laughed, saying that it feels a bit odd. Truthfully, the reason we invited Jamie and her kids was to introduce her to our son. My husband and I had already agreed.
If only someone like her could be our daughter-in-law.
That said, we weren't about to force anything, so we decided to leave things up to them after introducing them. Since Jamie would be taking care of our infant grandson, we had already explained our situation to her to some extent.
I can't believe there's a mother out there who wouldn't take care of such an adorable child.
She said in disbelief. My son and Jamie sat at the table in the living room, watching the children play.
It's nice, isn't it? The sound of children laughing.
My son said thoughtfully.
Yes, it is. And it's wonderful to see your parents cooking together in the kitchen as a couple.
Since the kitchen is an open layout, we could hear their conversation from where we were.
After Dad retired, he started taking cooking classes so he could cook for Mom while she was still working.
My son revealed, making my husband blush.
That's so nice. I wanted to have a marriage like that too. But I failed.
Me too.
I exchanged a glance with my husband, conveying silently that they seemed to be getting along well. He nodded enthusiastically.
So, Jamie, have you ever thought about living in a high-rise condo?
My son suddenly brought up the heart of the matter. My husband and I felt a wave of tension.
Well, I think this place is wonderful, but for me, it's more important who I live with than where I live.
Jamie answered, probably giving the perfect reply. At that moment, I was certain my son had fallen in love. From then on, Jamie and her children started visiting on weekends, and the four of them would go out with our grandson. They looked like a happy family that had been together for years. Perhaps Jamie, being smart, understood my son's trauma and knew how to gently heal his wounded heart. If that's the case, then that's fine. She's clever, so I believe she'll continue to build a happy family without any issues. About a year after our families became closely connected, my son came to us with a serious look.
I'm thinking of proposing to Jamie. Do you both support this?
My husband and I looked at each other and nodded.
It's about time, isn't it, honey?
Yes, I've been waiting for you to bring it up. Of course, we support you.
Absolutely.
We said in unison.